Hello everyone, my name's Deborah Garlick from Henpicked Menopause in the Workplace and author of the book Menopause, The Change for the Better. And I'm delighted that you're joining us today. It's Mental Health Awareness Week and we have a special guest with us today who is Linda Gillham who is the Healthy Minds lead at Peppy. And what we're going to be talking about is what you can do if you're experiencing the psychological symptoms of menopause, the symptoms that are perhaps lesser known, but many of us tend to experience, and whether you're able to take HRT or you don't want to take HRT. Linda's here to share some very practical tips with us that any of us can do. So I know yesterday when I was running a training session, somebody said to me, "Do you know, I just feel like I'm losing my mind. What's going on?" And of course, during menopause, our hormones may change quite dramatically. They may start to reduce, and of course, that can trigger menopausal symptoms. So I'd like to welcome Linda to join us. And Linda, we love your practical advice and tips. So can you tell us what's going on? Am I going mad?
No, you're definitely not going mad. That I can clear up immediately. But I do understand, and I do hear a lot in the chats that I run and the clients that I see about people feel like they are going mad. There's a lot of different psychological effects that menopause and perimenopause can have, and often they aren't always that well known. Just to think about to start with, anxiety. Many people have suffered from anxiety through their lives, and also many people haven't. And sometimes when the perimenopause comes along, it may be the first time that you experience a panic attack, for example. And the symptoms of a panic attack are very closely related to something like a heart attack. And it can be absolutely terrifying because you think there's something physically wrong with me. And just that thought process and how it can become circular can have a really detrimental effect on your mental health, on your self-esteem, and on your everyday functioning.
And you mentioned anxiety. What are the main psychological symptoms that people say get in the way of their life or their work the most? What's the range that we're talking about?
So when you think about the cognitive behavioural approach to anxiety, we think about how thoughts are linked to feelings, which are linked to behaviour. So very often we start to have thoughts about something that's going to happen, something that may have already happened that we're worrying about still. And that's when the feelings of anxiety can start. So our bodies go into a stress response, into the fight, flight, and freeze, which we need to survive and is uber useful if you're walking down a dark alley and you think somebody is following you. Not so useful if you're stood in the queue in the supermarket and you suddenly feel this rise or this flush and you feel, oh, I'm going to pass out. And just that loss of control is just so frightening. And that is based in these thoughts and how they're linked to the feelings and how they're linked to the behavior. And what can then happen is that we start to avoid situations because we fear that we're going to feel anxious or panicky. And obviously, with the year that we've just all experienced, that's an extra level because there is a real threat outside the front door. So it's been a very difficult time if this is the first time that you've experienced anxiety.
And anxiety, focusing on that one, that can be so dramatic. I know I've just seen somebody put in the chat that they found themselves in A&E last week, which must be absolutely terrifying if you don't know what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. And there are a couple of techniques that we can just briefly touch on if you do feel that panic attacks are becoming a problem. One of which is called the butterfly hug. And it was taught to survivors of Hurricane Pauline in Mexico. And it's quite simple. You put your hands on your collarbones and you tap at the top while breathing deeply, which I won't show you because I'll have to stop talking. But you breathe in and out slowly at the same time. And this is like a physical hug. It's like some reassurance. It's like it's okay to calm down. If you find yourself out and about and you feel rising panic, just placing a hand on your heart can have a huge impact. Again, it's a message to your body, just slow down. It's okay. Rather than what often we do is we start to hyperventilate and we can't catch our breath. And this is a sign to our bodies, speed up, come on, rub away, run away, get away from it. Whereas if we just slow, if we can learn to do that, then we can have a less of a reaction, or the panic attack can reduce a little bit quicker.
So it's important to understand that this can be as a result of menopause. Of course, it can be something else, but knowing that it can be menopause, and actually just those two techniques, I was doing that while you were saying, and that actually does feel very, very reassuring. So panic attacks are real, can happen, but there's something that you can do if you can feel that that's actually building up. So that's great for anxiety. And I'm sure, I know my anxiety is getting in the car. Driving, that one is so much more prevalent than people realize, isn't it?
Absolutely is. I've been hearing more and more, and I'm wondering, or I'm starting to wonder, whether the fact that we've been doing less driving is coming into play. So certainly for me now, to go out and drive somewhere is an unusual event, whereas it was something that I used to do every day. So I wonder if what we tell ourselves in between getting in the car, oh, last time you felt really anxious, is it a good idea if you go out in the car? What if you get anxious again? All of those thoughts start before we've even got behind the wheel. And I wonder if that plays a part too.
That plays a part. Now, so that's anxiety, and just those two techniques, and perhaps we'll do a summary at the end of the various techniques depending on your psychological symptoms. What about brain fog? That's one that gets me and is one of the most prevalent ones, and I'm kind of learning how to deal with it. When the internet goes down in your brain and suddenly you lose various names, what's going on there?
I think it's what's important to do is, I don't think anyone really knows why it happens, but when it happens, you can react again in different ways, just like with the panic. If you start to panic and get anxious when you can't think of a word, your brain is not going to let you have that word. So there's something about, okay, it's not coming to me. I mean, on big broadcasts like this and in my work, very often I'll halfway through a sentence think, I don't know where I'm going with this. And there's something about just buying yourself that little bit of time, just a pause and a breath to release, the neurons in your brain so that you can think of the word that you want. But if you go into that, well, you really should be able to remember this, or you're not very good at your job, are you anymore? Or do you think you really should be, if all those types of thoughts start to come in, you're even less likely to find the word that you're looking for. So there's something about challenging those negative critical thoughts that follow us around.
Yeah, yes, you're right, actually, because I'm now I know what I experience. And for that matter, understanding the triggers. So
Yeah.
for me, if I've not had a good night's sleep, if I'm overly stressed, that to me is when the words are even further than I can possibly reach. But actually accepting that's what it is, looking for those triggers and not feeling less than myself just because it happens.
And you mentioned, the importance of sleep. It's absolutely fundamental. And during the perimenopause and the menopause, so many women don't get a good night's sleep and expect themselves to be able to behave in just the same way the next day. You need to get through this kind of thinking, when actually you don't. If you haven't had a good night's sleep, your cognitive functioning is going to be impaired. You are going to be slower at things. You're probably going to be snappy. It's going to manifest. It's going to show, if and particularly if it's ongoing limited sleep.
But that's sometimes easier said than done, isn't it? When our lives are so busy and we've still got to get up and go to work, even if we haven't had a good night's sleep.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts around that? How do you cope with that?
There's different problems with sleep. There's the I can't get to sleep. There's the I keep waking up during the night, and then there's the I wake up too early in the morning and then can't get back to sleep. And a good technique for all of those is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. So you breathe in through your nose for 4, you hold it for 7, and then you blow out of your mouth for 8. And just by with the counting, the focusing on the breathing, keeping a focus on your breath, it can also help reduce some of the things that are keeping you awake. Because often it's the, I haven't done this, I've got this to do, oh no, I've forgotten that. That's what keeps us awake. And so if you do wake in the middle of the night, I'd recommend not looking at the time. That's just a trigger. Oh, it's only 2 o'clock, or oh, it's 5 o'clock, and off our minds go. And using a technique like that one to see if you can get back to sleep.
Thank you. Yes, that's we did have a lunch and learn on sleep, so all of the techniques. So we're often saying to people, if sleep's your problem, that's really got to be your primary focus, because if you have a good night's sleep, you can handle anything. So we've touched on anxiety, we've touched on brain fog. Making sure we get sleep, that's the foundation, that's the everybody needs a good night's sleep. One of the other ones is about feeling, and you mentioned it a little bit briefly earlier, feeling emotional.
Yeah. At this time, well, at any time, it's really important for us to feel our feelings. Again, we have lots of thoughts of that it's not okay to cry. It's not okay to be emotional. There's a bad type of feeling and there's a good type of feeling. And that's a little bit of a myth, really, because all feelings are important. All the feelings that we have are often in direct response to something that's happening. There's something going on. If you find that for example, you find that you cry regularly, yes, that there's hormone related issues with that. But also it may be that you've not quite worked out yet what is actually going on for you. And the best way to work through something like this is to find someone to talk to, because by talking about what's going on for you, you're bringing it to consciousness. And the thing with that is also is sometimes we don't actually say everything that's going on all at once. So when you sit down and say, look, this is what's going on, often the other person will say, and you don't think that's a lot. But we've got so used to dealing with a lot that it's become the norm for us. And it's time to drop some of the things, work out, why are we feeling overwhelmed? Why are we feeling emotional? And on the other side of that, it's also incredibly beneficial to have a very good cry, as much as it is a good laugh.
Is it really?
Absolutely.
It's beneficial to have a good cry, is it? I can be a bit stiff upper lip and think to myself, I'm not a blubber. I'm not going there. I'm not going to have any of that. But is that a release then?
Yes. I will often suggest someone pops on The Notebook on the TV or something that's a really good tear starter.
Oh yes, we should probably ask everybody in chat what's the biggest tear jerker for you, so that we can all benefit and perhaps have a group cry around that when you need it, when you need that sort of release.
Yeah.
So that's great. Now I can see that there's a lot of conversation happening in the chat, actually. People talking about some of the apps that they use and some of the techniques that they use. Any thoughts on those at all, Linda?
Yeah, no, there's some brilliant apps out there. There's lots of apps that can teach you mindfulness. Personally, I prefer visualizations. I have quite a busy mind and I struggle to direct my mind with mindfulness. So I like somebody to guide me through maybe a walk in the woods or along the beach, that type of thing. I found one that I really like recently on YouTube, and it's watching jellyfish in an aquarium. And I find that really calming. I think they're beautiful. So I really enjoy watching that to relax. And I think the key to this is really finding what works for you. Some people like music. There's a beautiful app called Cove where you make your own music. Other people like talking. Some people like sleep stories. Everyone's different. So I'd really encourage people to look through a range of the apps to find one that they really like.
It's interesting that you mention these apps and mindfulness, because I know one of my triggers to my brain fog, and generally, it can feel like it's a downward spiral for me. I feel like I'm losing my words. I start to feel anxious about it. Things start to get on top of me. And just sometimes how you can just break out of that cycle. And it is a bit of a downward cycle. And mindfulness and mindful work really does help, because we do know that menopause and stress are not good bedfellows, are they? The more stressed I am, the more my psychological symptoms are going to be. So a lot of the things that you're talking about are how we make our shoulders drop,
Yeah.
how we relieve that stress so that we can feel better. So that's a big help, isn't it? Mindfulness does work.
It does. And sometimes there's a point where we need to question our own expectations of ourselves, because often they're ours, they're not somebody else's. It's in our minds. We think, I really should be able to get this much done in a day. It's no one else that's asking us to do that. And then at the end of the day, we tell ourselves that we didn't complete everything, and then we feel lazy. That there's lots of things that we can do for ourselves, as well as meditating and using mindfulness. But mindfulness is brilliant. It's keeps you in the present moment. And if you think about the amount of time some people spend ruminating over the past, which isn't going to change anything, we get anxious when we think about the future. So if we can keep in the present moment as much as we can, there's no need for either, if that makes sense. It's just about being right now. Yeah.
It does make a lot of sense, because actually the outcome from a lot of these psychological symptoms that we experience is that our self-esteem can start to drop, and our level of confidence. And you mentioned affirmations earlier.
Yeah. So, I mean, self-esteem, again, we can struggle with that throughout our whole life. But I think if you think about the time of life when the menopause comes along, if it comes along at a natural time of life, then we are starting to age. Our bodies have changed. Sometimes we're stuck between our children and our parents. So we're busier than we've ever been. We don't have time for ourselves. So spending a few minutes, maybe in the morning or the evening, with some affirmations, or even sticking a few up somewhere where you regularly go, maybe, the bathroom or wherever, they are so powerful. They have such a massive effect on self-esteem. Is being kind to yourself and saying the things that you want to hear. You can do that for yourself. You don't need to rely on others for that type of recognition.
I've heard this before around, if you said the things you say to yourself to a friend, they probably wouldn't be your friend for very long. So be a friend to yourself first.
Yeah.
But it's hard to sometimes get into that. What technique do you use to give yourself affirmations? Because if you're starting from scratch, you never heard about it, what does that look like?
You can get apps. Some of the apps are a little bit cheesy, I'm not going to lie. So it's nice if you can make up your own. And I think a soft starter is something around, I'm okay as I am. And then you can sort of magnify that if you want to. You can tell yourself that you're beautiful. You can point out to yourself your great attributes. And it helps move away from focusing on the negative. Because yes, you may hate your legs, but that's not the whole of you. So really, focus on the areas of yourself that you like. And with the aging process, again, I know that's difficult. We look in the mirror, and I certainly sometimes think, really, is that me? And so it is finding these new things that you love about yourself and reminding yourself regularly about them. If you want to increase the power of them, you can say them to yourself in the mirror as well. So you can just say them, or you can actually look in the mirror and say them to yourself.
Right, okay, because many of us, and this is something that we've talked about before, our brains can be wired for the negative side rather than the positive.
And we can change that. That is the brilliant thing that we've discovered over time, is that brains, you know, the neuroplasticity of our brain is we can change these neural pathways. It takes practice and it takes time, but we can change them into a more positive frame.
That's fabulous. Now I can see chat's going absolutely crazy, so I really want to see what people are saying about this. And actually, you're making me feel emotional. Whether I need to give myself a butterfly hug. But welcome, Sally. And what are people saying in the background? Is this resonating with people?
Absolutely. So many people. I just want to say thank you everyone for sharing. So many people are sharing their experiences, sharing what they're how it's affecting them, how it's making them feel, which is just so, one of the wonderful things about this is knowing that it's not just you going through it, which is absolutely amazing. And also people are sharing so many hints and tips on apps they've used, things that they've found that have been successful. Like one of the things I really liked around the word loss, which is something I really struggle with, that loss of nouns, saying that she really focuses on picturing the item. And that allows the word to come, which I thought was a really great practical tip that was coming through. We've got a few questions that I thought would be good for us to explore that have come in. One around a kind of a panic around the short-term memory loss and the worry that it's something more. And how do people kind of work their way through that?
Yeah, and I think that was one of my thoughts around, people asking me, am I going mad? Because again, if you are struggling with short-term memory all of a sudden, then if you type that into Google, which most of us tend to do, you're going to get hits about Alzheimer's and dementia, without a doubt. So the first thing is stay off Google, because that's what you're going to find. If you look for it, you'll find it. And yes, there may be a cause to get checked out if you're really concerned, for reassurance more than for a diagnosis. But when you factor it with all the other symptoms, that's when you realize that actually this is about the menopause. This is not in isolation. You're not forgetting things in isolation. You have usually a range of symptoms, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
And I think setting alerts, right? I'm a big one for alerts and lists. If I ever lost my phone, I'd have to just stay in my kitchen, I think, because I wouldn't know where I had to be. Yeah. So I've certainly learned to remind myself a lot more as I'm getting older, and I find that works.
Absolutely. I often say if I don't write something down, it's not happening. So we've got a couple of other questions. We've got one around whether HRT helps with the emotional, the kind of crying, those kind of type symptoms.
I can only talk from personal experience. I do take HRT, and I can say that it has helped me. And yet I still do experience days where I could just weep. So it's much better than it was. But yes, I still do have that.
Absolutely. And I know I've spoken when we've worked with a lot of the GPs and gynecologists we work with, is that HRT isn't a magic pill that's going to, especially if you've got huge amounts of other things going on in your life. So actually dealing with all of those things and thinking about those techniques that you've talked about is really important, whether you're taking or not taking HRT.
Yeah.
We've got someone here and we've got a few people that have talked about some of the more unusual symptoms of menopause, and I think obviously we've talked about some of the ones today, and someone's talked around that they've had a food intolerance that's turned into an allergy, and the kind of reaction has been a chest tightening, racing hearts, panic feeling, and almost like an anxiety attack. But actually moving away for them, it was to do with cooking fumes and to do with their impact. And we've heard this, a commonality around the allium plant family, so garlic and onions and gases and things like that, that are making it. But I think, again, it's understanding triggers, I think, is quite an important thing.
Yeah, I've also heard about a histamine intolerance as well.
Yeah.
Which is something that I thought I was going to be diagnosed with, but I've managed to sort out the digestive side of things in another way. Again, this is about finding calm. It's identifying your triggers and knowing what works for you, and also not trying to learn things like mindfulness when you're stressed. Because if your mind is racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour, you will not be able to be mindful.
Yeah.
So it's teaching yourself mindfulness and then being able to use it when you need it. Otherwise, you try and do it for 10 seconds, you fail because you just can't stop your thoughts, And then you think, oh no, mindfulness doesn't work. That's not for me. But if you try it when you are calmer, it's a great tool to have when you need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And any kind of tips on getting started with something like mindfulness?
Tiny bits at a time.
Okay.
I've heard, I've had clients in my private practice say to me, oh, I've tried to do 30 minutes of mindfulness. Cut it back to 2 maximum, even less. Even if you could manage 30 seconds where you're able to let these thoughts go, then you're on your way to learning how to do it. Small and often, I would say, is the key. Don't allocate an hour and try and be mindful for that hour on your first attempt.
Absolutely. And someone's asked around, how long do symptoms last for? Will we ever escape brain fog? Which I think is a great...
I'm so sorry. I wish I had the answer to that, because I'd like to know it too. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I think that's all we can be, because that's the other thing I find difficult, with this period, is the uncertainty. Is it going to last 3 or 4 years? Is it going to last 8 to 10 years? Often you sometimes read or hear about somebody, and they're a lot older than you, and they're still experiencing symptoms. And it can be so disheartening to think that this could go on and on and on. And again, that's another flag for come back into the here and now. We can only deal with what's going on for us today, not worry about what's going to happen next year or in 5 years' time.
Absolutely. And I think it's just one last one around GPs. So someone's talked around being prescribed antidepressants. And I think one of the big challenging things around the psychological symptoms of menopause, in terms of what we might present to a GP, because we are feeling emotional and anxious, and those are those psychological symptoms that we're presenting, that actually that may be what it looks like to a GP, that they may be looking to deal with a psychological condition as opposed to a hormonal imbalance. And this is where that tracking of symptoms, understanding everything that's going on, can be really helpful. And
certainly for me, my first visit to the GP, he asked me if I was going through the change, which I was slightly shocked to hear. And when I said, well, yes, I think I probably am perimenopausal, again, I think it was amitriptyline or some antidepressant that I was offered on the first visit, and I didn't want to go down that route. And I think a talking therapy can be as beneficial as antidepressants, or if you feel you're really struggling, my ideal way of working in therapy is to start an antidepressant as well as talking therapy. And as the relationship in the talking therapy increases, to decrease the antidepressant. That would be my model for working. But counselling and psychotherapy definitely can benefit us at this time.
Yeah, brilliant. I think
what we're hearing from you. Thank you very much, Sally. What I'm hearing from you, Linda, is little and often, that we can't necessarily, because quite frankly, if you added anything else to my to-do list right now, I think I'd feel my anxiety levels going up.
Yeah.
We had an interesting question about can blood pressure, increased blood pressure, be helped with this? Any thoughts on that one?
Again, I'm pretty sure there is research about mindfulness and blood pressure and how that can have an impact and to help reduce it.
Fabulous. So we'll get the recording out of all of this with all of your top tips. And thank you very much for everybody. I think we've got plenty to go and have a little sob about if we need. The top one seems to be beaches. Emmerdale Farm, I didn't know that was actually a bit of a tear jerker. We've got the Elephant Man in there. We've got some great suggestions on some apps. So sort of a quick summary of your techniques. There was the butterfly.
Yep.
There was the heart.
Yep.
Mindfulness.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm going
4-7-8 breathing as well. Yep.
4-7-8 breathing, some positive affirmations, and we've got to go and sit in front of a mirror and tell ourselves, I am okay, or look for the positives in ourselves during this time. And actually, I think I have seen some, I better take that off. I have seen some research that actually talking about menopause can help relieve some of the stress and symptoms, because as you quite put it so well, Sally, you are not alone. We can all experience all of these. Some of it, can be alleviated with HRT, but whether or not you want to take that or not, there's a lot that we can do through our own thoughts and some good techniques.
Yeah.
So,
and finding a group of other women is a fantastic resource, because very often you're the only one in your family. You know, you're the mum, you're the one that's this age group, you're the one that's experiencing this. So to find others to share this journey with is so important. The menopause groups that I run around the mental health in Peppy, they're so popular. The feedback is fantastic.
absolutely excellent. And one that we have, I've just seen popping up on the comments below, is around, you know, if you are really struggling and your GP is not listening to you, there's actually a very good article on our website, which is how to have a good conversation with your GP. We know of some hero GPs out there, but we also know of some who think menopause is just something you've got to get through. So do ask for a second opinion. And when we send out the newsletter after this session with a watch again, if you want to, and the notes from this session will also include how to have a good conversation with your GP, because that's very, very important. But thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Thank you very much, Sally Leach, for doing the wonderful Q&As as you always do, and Manning. I don't know how many comments we had there. That was excellent.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you very much, Linda Gillham. We love your practical advice and top tips. So thank you very, very much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
We look forward to seeing everybody again very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.